Welcome to Foundation of Podcast, the officially unofficial podcast for Foundation on Apple TV Plus. I'm Jim.
I'm Aaron.
And today we're talking Season 2, Episode 10, Creation Myths. This is the season finale. Aaron, we were all excited about this show going into the finale. Curious to see what you think after watching it.
I have... This might be the longest intro to a podcast we've ever recorded because I have a lot of complicated feelings. You know, obviously, you left us last podcast. We were saying things like, you know, surely they're not going to put people into cry. You know, like we called out a lot of things that like would be very hard to pull off well. You know, if you just psych out and transport Terminus to some other place, and it turns out it's all a trick and no one dies. You know, if you what was the other one? Oh, if you know, Gale and Salvor just climb back into the cryopods at the end of the season. We called a whole bunch of things. It turned out that's exactly what happened. But I also said that like you can do anything as long as it's done well. Now, did they do those things well? I'm going to argue yes. And in fact, the first reaction I had when I saw this episode was, I mean, I liked a lot of it, but the big reveals, I kept on thinking, I'm not sure. I feel like this is just very tricksy and false. But the more I thought about it, the more I think we finally kind of rounded this analogy when we were talking to our friend Pete Peppers, because we had a conversation with him that will be released in the near future as part of our season wrap-up coverage. I said, the feeling I had at the end of the episode was like the times in my life where I've been gotten really good, like on a practical joke level, by a trusted friend or family member, and I'm still processing like the panic or the anger or the confusion of what they did to me. And everybody's laughing, and I'm like, I don't know if I feel good about this, but then I'm like, yeah, no, that's fair play. It's a good joke you guys got. And the more I think about it, and when I start thinking about it in years past, I'm like, oh yeah, that was a hilarious story, right? I'm glad I went through it. I feel like I'm with the finale, that I think that Goyer and the writing team pulled a really good trick on us that does not play false. I think it's tricksy, but not false. It weaves together a lot of themes that they've been working all season long. In fact, going back to the first season, very elegantly. And the thing that really makes it not false is like they do all these things in lesser shows. There's no cost. It's like, it's just magic. You know, Harry comes in, saves the day, no one dies. This episode pays more cost in terms of main characters we care about than your average season of Game of Thrones. Like, you count them up. Hober, Bel Rios, which, you know, they're new characters, but they're very well defined. I quite like them. Who else we got?
Salvor.
We got Salvor, huge. And like, I know these aren't real deaths, but it feels like real deaths and impacted Demerzel. The entire Klingonic dynasty, all exponents wiped out and decanted. That was played like a real moment. The loss in terms of like the relationship that Demerzel has to her half-men children, there was costs that were paid. It didn't, and that's made it not feel cheap, you know? So like at the end, and the thing is I've watched this, this morning was my fourth time over 2 weeks, and I kept liking it more and more each time I watched it. So that's like I said, I think, I don't know what people are going to think because, you know, this isn't schmuck bait. But it is definitely a bait and switch, and like I said, I think it works. And in the context of the season, I don't think this does anything to jeopardize Foundation's place as one of the most exciting, you know, best looking, highest concept, best acted science fiction shows on television right now. What do you think, Jim?
So as you'll hear in this podcast with Pete that we're going to release here as during the wrap up, I was real negative on this episode after seeing it the first time, and we were podcasting like 2 hours after I'd watched it, so I was pretty raw.
And I think I was like 4 days into my emotional process, and Pete was in like a week or two.
Yeah, and we've had a week or so, like a week and a half or so, to process it, and I've been thinking about it a lot. And I've definitely mellowed from that take that you'll hear quite a bit. but I'm certainly more negative on it than you are at this point. I think it's not like the practical joke and it was all fair and done above the board. There is a lot of deceitful stuff happening here, and I think specifically around the Harry and Gale plan that not only could I not see, but if they had shown me the things that they needed to show me to stick to the visual language of the story they were telling, it would have given up the game, and so they didn't. And I think that's like that to me is a bridge too far. If you're going to trick me, you have to at least play honestly, and I don't feel like they did in that regard. Some of the other stuff I think they did fine with. Like, I think it's disappointing, given all the praise that we put onto the show last week for its audacious decisions to blow up Terminus, things like that, that we just kind of roll all that back. Ultimately, it's not like as big of a deal, though, because I did feel like they played it fairly above board. I knew that the Vault had certain capabilities that were, essentially magical. I feel like there was the possibility space there for that, because they hadn't told me, through the language of cinema that really couldn't be the case. So I'm a little hit or miss when it comes to the different switcheroos that they pulled in this episode. And we'll talk a lot more about them when we get to them. But ultimately, I think it erodes my confidence in the series a little bit, because I don't feel like they played fair. And and as a viewer, I want to emotionally invest in the things I'm seeing on screen. And when I can't trust the things I'm seeing on screen, Westworld, I start to divest myself of all of my emotional investment. Yeah.
There's also, like, the other thing is, like, some of my cherished favorite series ever, like Breaking Bad's top 5 show for me. It made our bones in terms of podcasting, and it had, in my opinion, a disastrous season 2 finale that nearly had me throw up my hands and be like, why the hell am I wasting my time watching this stupid show? But I was in the minority on that. That was just a bugaboo I had about, FAA and air traffic control and the reality of so. But so maybe it's something like that, where it is a step that's kind of like, I don't know about that. But I want to key on something you said, because I think that's the real lingering disappointment is, yes, at the end of last episode, I thought it was so audacious. It was such a swing for the fences. It was such a, like, also, as I kept on thinking, like, how the follow-on effects of, like, oh my God, because a lot of things I was worried about in terms of the left hand knowing about the right hand is kind of neatly solves that. And, and I was seeing, like, this is like classic, like, paint yourself into a corner. Where do you go next? I have no idea. And the lingering disappointment is kind of like, I wish I'd seen how they had gotten out of that fictitious scenario that I invented for myself, because they had invented an entirely different scenario. Like I said, there's like, I think you've got a bugaboo about the Mentalic plotline that we can talk about. I have one or two that I don't know about. But like I said, it's man, last episode was super incredible, and it really knocked over the table. And at the end of this episode, 75% of the table has been carefully reconstructed.
And I think there's a lot to like about this episode too. I don't want to just say it's all negative, but overall, my general feeling is more negative than positive, I would say.
Yeah. Like I said, I've had a little bit. I don't know if it's a little bit more time to think about it, or I was not as invested in some of the tells that you were, because I'm curious to see how that all shakes out when we talk about it.
Okay. Let's get into the recap so we can talk about it. We start off with Gale and Harry explaining to Salvor how Harry is still alive. Apparently he never died. Gale just made it seem that way to everyone in the village, including Tellum and Salvor. And this is interesting. So this is like simultaneously the biggest problem I have, and explains so much about some of the weird things we saw, right? There's scenes here, and there's flashbacks. They're actually like showing us, remember this part where Gale is like meditating and counting primes, and you see Salvor come up to her, and she's too busy to deal with it. That's her apparently working with Harry to mask whatever plan they had going on, and we don't even really know what the plan was, because without Salvor's, input here, it apparently doesn't work. But this is the problem, because in that scene they specifically do show Salvor meditating and all these visual effects going on, right? That telltale sign of mentalic powers being used. And this is where I have a problem, because they don't show that in every scene afterward. Gale should constantly be emitting that stuff if this were the case. And they further compound that later by the Mentalics coming up to them and saying, hey, you freed us. We were always under the spell of Tellum. Why isn't every scene with Tellum in it showing that same power stuff?
Yeah, I'm curious to see what Goyer thinks about that, because I could also see there's an answer that involves the point of view and the target of application that, like, if you watched it all, it is in fact entirely
everyone's
consistent.
A target of application in Gale's instance. She says, like, we
well,
had
I'm just
to
saying,
hide it from everyone. Salvor, certainly.
What I'm saying is, I'm just saying that, like, I'm not sure if this is the kind of thing where it's like, I'm watching some gunplay, and then, like, I notice, like, oh, like, a fifth of the shots don't have the, like, rounds ejecting and the fire effects coming out. And my question would be, was that an oversight? Was that an editing glitch? Was that an intentional tell? Because I don't know, the entire. It could be that there is something that makes all that consistent. But I suspect you are right that they were forced to make a couple of concessions for a few key scenes that, if they did have the wavy lines, maybe. But I don't even know if that's true. I don't know that if you had first of all, I don't know that I agree that they have to have the wavy lines going all the time if Tellum is, like, mentally enthralling them the whole time. But man, that's one of my biggest problems too. I felt like that was a little too Wizard of Ozzy. Like, okay. Like, that's literally the Wicked Witch of the East's guard coming up and being like, Dorothy, you've saved us, thank God, and it's like just instantly resolves. I wish they had done it where, like, maybe they're staggering around in confusion. They're like, you're not sure what's going on. I mean, they're not hostile or evil, and like it's something that they have to kind of be. They're like cult members, deeply enthralled in a way that even earthly cults can't even imagine. And there's going to be a lot of period of recovery. Now, there's a darker option where Harry might just be substituting one cult for another to maintain control. That'd be interesting to explore. But to me, it's like I would have much rather had these people be dazed, disoriented, confused, and a fleeced flock in need of a shepherd, rather than just like instantly grasping. Because you're right, that makes it seem like it's much more of an active control that Tellum had moment to moment, day to day, whereas I was envisioning it before that happened as like a more passive thing, where she would just give them motivations and base desires that benefited her, but it's not like, oh my God, like what did she ever lapse unconscious with the whole, they just like fall upon her and tear her apart, or
yeah, maybe.
But yeah, you're keen on one of the things that I didn't quite. I thought was a little bit of a bummer too.
I think it's one of the only, I think, deceitful things they do here. I think they specifically were telling us a thing with the visual language and then didn't use it when they didn't want us to know, which is dishonest. But what are you gonna do?
The other thing, though, that like really sold it for me on the second time I watched it is this monologue where Gale's essentially talking about miracles. I mean, essentially physical miracles that we can't explain. Like, one of the bedrock foundations of rationality is causality, right?
Sure.
But you and I both believe in something that had no beginning. That, maybe we can. Maybe it's just. Maybe it's just it's a contraction and it's an ongoing, but we don't know, and we just like are fine with it, right? And I feel like that's kind of Goyer's asking us to go with this, kind of like, sometimes something happens from nothing, and it's a miracle, and it's there. You can touch, you can taste it, you can experience it. It's a universe, but you can't necessarily explain it. And like I said, I'm inclined to let the show slide on that the same way I was inclined to allow a major airline colliding in the air over Albuquerque. But it's another thing. It's like, I hope it doesn't become a habit on the show where it's like, just go with us on this. Like, but at critical junction you can. And the other thing is like, I really wanted all this to work. Like, I think one of the reasons the vault worked so well is because deep down I didn't want all those people to die. I didn't want Harry to coldly sacrifice millions of his people, even in furtherance of saving the galaxy. I was very interested intellectually to see how he would come up with the Foundation the Third or whatever. And I'm still, like, honestly, I'm a little bit as excited on the other side to see how they're going to do the Foundation story with the two Foundations having knowledge of each other. And they're kind of setting up with the in the final minutes of this, the idea of maybe there's a Harry versus Harry showdown in our future. A dark Dr. Selden versus Harry showdown, which is fucking really cool and exciting.
I think that implication was definitely there when Harry's like, oh, the Foundation might become its own problem and we might need to fix it. So that's pretty exciting. I think let's talk about some of the good stuff that this reveal did. It retroactively makes that scene where Gale's meditating make sense. And I think it's really interesting when you look at the pulling thread stuff that Salvor was on earlier. She was, trying to get on this boat to go see what coordinates it went to, and Gale comes over to her and is like, stop pulling threads. This is not a good time. Well, we understand now that not only did she have a plan going, but she was the one suppressing the coin ability of Salvor, not tell him like we thought, right? So I think that was kind of cool.
And in reinforcing the themes of the show that's been building on and on and on, Salvor fucking with the plan saved the plan. Like
because their plan
like individual unplanned action that but it's like, what Harry said, you've got an infinite possibilities to get to an inevitability. I really found that philosophically satisfying. The fact that Gale had this plan, Harry had this plan, and Salvor did her best to thwart it. And if she hadn't, they would have all, Gale would have been consumed by Tellum. Salvor would have died in the pit, and Harry would have, I guess, starved in the jungle. I don't know what he would have done. Probably been as soon as Gale stopped shielding him, he'd been unminded and killed. So,
and I was also mentally prepped for, a reveal about how Harry was not dead, right? I mean, we obviously saw it last episode. We've been talking about, is he's some kind of robot human hybrid?
Right.
That idea was definitely out there. It's just the way that they revealed it, has its pros and cons, let's say.
Well, it's going to be like, the thing is, as a podcaster, I'm super not looking forward to the type of speculation that this is going to encourage the fandom to make, because there's like Katie barred a door. Like, you can't say, but also I keep coming back to, like, I don't know that it's tricksy and dishonest, like you're saying, deceitful, or is it more like a sleight of hand magician's trick? Because all the things that we're saying about are things that we on the podcast said there's something more to this that we don't understand yet. So, like, if they were really being bullshitting us, we would not have been saying that. So, like, there were all these, smoking guns, but we just didn't know from what direction the bullet had come from and if it hit anybody. So it's like, I have a hard time saying that, like, they were really pulling the wool over our eyes more than just a good storyteller because of that. Like, there were flashing neon signs that there's something else there. It's just we couldn't quite put it together until this end.
Well, because we were misled by visual effects, in my mind. But
okay.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to the Metallics approaching the beggar, explaining that they're not under Tellum's spell anymore, and they're grateful for being freed. They were apparently prisoners, not followers, which makes a hell of a lot of sense in retrospect.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go
over...
it
makes Tellum even a bigger monster as well. Like, the fact that this isn't one from a certain point of view, or she just tricked them, like, and made them... made him think that they needed her for survival because she saved them. It's just like she actually had to have 100% control over them. But like I said, that is a little too Wizard of the Ozzy. I think and I've gotten a lot of feedback on this. A lot, we grew up in a cult. There's been several people emailing us talking about how they have identified with some of the stuff that has been on the show in terms of, like, Gale getting out of her fundamentalist religion and things, and it's like, this kind of like, oh, thanks for saving us, we're 100%, we have no, like, we intuitively grasp everything that was done to us, and we are, completely ready to go in another direction. I think betrays a lack of understanding of how that. And now it'd be a more interesting story if, like, in addition to like turning this people into an army, through coercion and manipulation, like helping them heal. But again, that might be a bad criticism, because they might be leaning into the darker aspects of, Harry turning some of these children into child soldiers. And
Certainly
they don't have a
possible,
choice in the matter, right? Mm-hmm. Like, they're gonna if they give them free will, it's gonna be sold as like, well, if you either fight now or you're gonna be killed individually.
Sure.
But those are really interesting things, and like they explore a little bit of this on Ahsoka, the impacts of people's psychology on using children soldiers and whatnot. I thought that'd be an interesting way for them to take this too. So it's like, I'll have to look the next season to see like how the next 152 years go with the Mentalics before I kind of like, am I not happy about that or what?
Gotcha. All right, let's go over to Demerzel, who enters the secret chamber where Dusk and Rue are trapped. She explains how conflicted she feels over the emotions that she had for Cleon and how untrusting she is of them. She's also unable to help them break the bonds programmed into her. And she reveals that she was behind the assassination attempt on Day, trying to break off the engagement, and Dusk forgives her, and then she murders both he and Rue.
I have no notes. Much like season
scene.
1, the Empire plotline can do no wrong, can commit no sins. This is an amazing scene. Laura, I listened to the podcast, and apparently it's not Byrne or Bryn, it's Bjarn. It's pronounced like Bjarn.
My American tongue can't do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just Bjarn. You just gotta, like she said, just gotta spit it out there. This is a clinic of doing a performance that there is no manual for, and sure. I really like how it was a dance between her and the writers and Goyer and the director, to like get all this stuff on, and it's like it's all there, like every nuance of the emotion I think you're supposed to be getting from her, like these fundamental things of like, I think I love this man, but I don't know, and it haunts me. Mm-hmm. And it
comes down to like almost a determinism kind of thing, like nature versus nurture, and in the most applicable way possible. And
I kind of did love this boy right up until the moment that he put the chip in me, and now I hate him, but I can't. But I also think I love him, but I can never be. Yeah, and she's like the envy of you people that, you don't wonder if you feel horny or you feel happy or you feel in love. You don't question, like, where is that coming from? Although I think the Emperors could be one of the few people who could actually question those motives and their manipulations and stuff. Sure. But, I was going to
say, and she has the added bonus of not being able to forget anything, not being able to coerce her own mind into believing that something is true when it empirically is not, when she has the memory of it being false, right? Like that's the thing she says about Cleon that was really interesting to me, is eventually by the end he convinced himself that this was not he did not force me to love him, that it was some kind of communion, and she knows better because she remembers the exact events, right? We can trick our minds, we can remember things other than exactly how they happened. She's stuck in that prison of perfect memory.
Which I thought it was interesting, that implies that, if anything, the vision that we saw, the story we heard Cleon narrate, is a sugar-coated version of the truth, which is already horrific.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this scene is this is why I love this show, right? The acting is on another level. The writing thematically is so full. It's so like it considers every angle of the idea that it's talking about. It holds it up and really examines it. And and then just the language itself that it uses, it's beautiful.
When she said, so like at the conclusion of this story with like tears running down her eyes and that like kind of all halting way she has, she says, so you see, I've been left to reap a blighted field.
Right.
Like an eternal, like, no matter what I do, this shit is going bad. It's rotted. It's decaying.
It's poetic,
and
man.
Can you blame me for taking like these extreme measures to try to fulfill my directive, which I don't have a choice to do one way or the other, which is interesting how it Boy, it's going to be really interesting when we apply this to the Dawn conversation at the end of the episode that kind of bookends this. But I just love that.
Yeah, they're, like I said about examining it from every angle, they're kind of holding up a duality here. Like Dusk is saying, none of us were ever free. We were fools to think we could be. And then at the end, you get Salvor saying exactly the opposite. Like, this proves that we can take fate into our own hands and change it.
Well, it shows the fatalism of the Empire, the inevitability of their decline versus the actual outlying, the actual people who are trying to fight the darkness, which is the Foundation.
Yeah.
But I love like Rue, like, because Dusk, it's interesting because every time I watch this scene, I try to figure out the exact moment he knows he dies. And I keep pushing it back 30 seconds. Yeah. I keep on, every single time I watch it, I feel like 30 more seconds earlier, I'm like, oh no, I can see it in his face right now.
Yep. He's
Terrence
so
Mann
resigned
knows it's
to
his ass.
Yep.
Like, by the time he comes out and says it, that's the third step of the Martin reveal. You need to back up like a minute or two to get to where he actually knows it's all over. Yeah. But even then, and then when Rue realizes it, because she realizes it like way after him, she tries to make a break for it. I love how she just snatches her. It's like, I don't know. I always love those like superhuman android shows of strength. Like, she just snatches her arm, and you can hear like the bone snapping as she forces her back into the cell. It's like, you are not getting out of this pit alive. And then Dusk giving her the betrayer's mark. I thought that was such a fucking nice touch.
I like how well they foreshadow it and how well they hide it when it's happening. They show that first shot, the opening shot of this scene is him trying to claw at the floor to remove some panels, and you can see his finger is all green, which it comes from, I assume, when he walked down here, right? He touched the mural.
Yeah, he had to touch
and
the pigment.
Door opens. Yeah,
and that betrayer's mark was, or that odd chroma pitch was the door handle. So
and then when he walks up to Demerzel here and he's actually placing the mark on here, they don't show that finger. They expect you to have seen it earlier, and I did notice, oh, that finger is green. What's going on?
To the extent that, and that's why it's like, I'm not going to sit there and like go after the writers on the show, because I was even thinking when I was rewatching this and they kept on showing Cleon's finger, covered in paint, and I'm like, man, I wonder how many times they agonized over how often they would show that. How often do we show it? Do we need to recall it later in the episode? Do we need to recall the mural conversation? Do we need to have the voiceover underneath it? Like, so many creative decisions that are going to hinge on whether millions of people like something or be like, pfft. And I'm glad it's not my job. But I thought that was a really nice note, that he comes in for his moment of tenderness and forgiveness. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But he's also using that to warn Cleon, and Dusk is using to warn Dawn. And what's really brilliant is that Dawn doesn't 100% understand what's happened. He can't say, in a moment of tenderness, he put that on her neck. He might think, Demerzel went to go strangle him in his painting, and But it's another thing that reinforces the themes of like these little pebbles falling through history that change things. Like, no one could have predicted that he would have that paint on his finger, that he would have had this history lesson with Dawn, that Dawn would be able to, that Demerzel wouldn't have walked past a reflective surface and seen on herself that this is on. Like, so many things had to go wrong for things to kind of go right for Dawn. And that shit like really shines through for me the more I watch it. So much of the episode that does execute like this very intricately designed, glockenspiel. This is wind-up thing, this is dancing. And that in itself reinforces the theme of the show.
I think it's another testament to this scene and how good it is, that what should be the biggest reveal of the season, the fact that Demerzel was behind the assassination attempt and trying to break up the marriage in the first place, is kind of just lost in all the other greatness that's happening here.
Yeah.
Like, it's a footnote in this scene to me. Maybe because, we had maybe suspected it and started learning more about it, but also because everything else going on here is so much, not necessarily more interesting, but it's more subtle and nuanced.
Does do we feel like, because it's interesting that Demerzel talks about, you know, how she feels about her children, quote unquote, versus the man himself, and that she says he was, you know, you have your aspects, your dawn, your dusk, and your day, but he was the full blazing sun going its like he was the sunrise and sunset, right? He was the whole meal deal. Does that explain why the clones have such a smaller memory engram than the original Cleon? Because his was like 2.5 times bigger.
Maybe.
Like what? I was trying to think of, like, you know, how, because like to me, it's not that Demerzel's wholesale deleting and editing these people's memories all the time. It'd be like she just plucks things that they don't need to know, that they accidentally discovered and things like that. But like, man, it's still like 2.5 times seems a lot. Is there still some threads to pull there, you think?
It feels like it to me. I don't feel like I got the full answer on when, like, what part of Cleon was not included in the clones, I guess. So,
and there's also like another, like, he's very early into the dusk cycle. Like if we're in the original Cleon in terms of his age, they still have another 20 plus years of planning, you know, pulling the genetic dynasty together and getting it off the road. And a lot of questions. Like there's a really good feedback that we got at the end of this episode where someone's like, why did Cleon decide to do it this way? Like, why wouldn't he just transfer his memory and to prime clone bodies and just live forever with his queen? Like, why wasn't, or his empress? Why wasn't that a plan? Why did he want to just live the one life and then pass it on to these sessions of half men and half? I don't have real great answers. I got some theories and some things I could say, but like, I'm saying there's a lot. Even though we got so many answers, there's still, I think, a lot of mysteries to kind of pull at the threads. And Goyer mentioned in the podcast for episode 9 that he has 3 additional kind of mini stories that he wants to tell of Demerzel. The capture of her by the emperor that kind of pulls her apart and tortures her. He wants to tell the story of her walking the circle, and then he wants to tell the story of her creation back on Earth and why she left Earth. So, and like, and obviously he's like, you know, if I get to tell those stories, they keep giving me more seasons, but like, those all sound fascinating. And that's just on the Demerzel side, but I keep on wanting to know, like, more about Cleon 1, more about Cleon 1 and their relationship. I would love another flashback vignette of like, what does that look like 10 years in? What was his final moments like? What was she allowed to say at the last moment? And, you know, what about this episode transpires that gives her a little bit of flex on the Dawn issue at the end of the episode, if she indeed flexes?
Yeah.
So
we don't necessarily know. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if we'll see more about the memory stuff, the disparity between memories, but I imagine you could explain it as that's all Demerzel stuff, right? That's all.
Yeah.
The plan. That's all his emotions for Demerzel. That they don't need that stuff, and in fact, that would be harmful to the long-term plan. So we'll see. Let's go back over to Terminus. Day commands Bell to jump to every other planet the Foundation has touched so they can destroy them all. Bell refuses, so Day orders the spacer to do it, and when she does, the fleet's ships begin exploding one by one, and they're unable to stop the cascade. It's only a matter of time before every ship in the fleet is destroyed. Hober reveals that he actually made a deal with the spacers after all, and this was a trap set for the fleet. Day begins fighting everyone. Bell gets thrown out of the airlock, but castles Day into his place at the last moment. And then Bell says, Hober, Constant, one of you can escape the ship, and I'll show you how. This is another big switcheroo. This is big switcheroo number 2. And
I don't have a single problem with this switcheroo. I think this plays beautifully. It makes a lot of sense. And it didn't play false with us at all. What did you?
I went back and I watched the scene where Hober's trying to make a deal with Shia Center.
Yep.
And the language there, it is really hard to twist. You have to twist it pretty damn hard to get a deal out of that dialogue. The specific thing she says is when he offers the Opalesque and their freedom, she says the Opalesque is tempting, but the risk is too great. You are correct. 10% of our offspring is tied to the Imperium. But if Empire learns we have exchanged words with you, they will demand 20. We cannot bear that. That, like I said, is really hard to twist a deal out of.
But did she immediately call Empire then?
Yes.
Because I remember there's a cut, like they cut the middle of the negotiation part out. I was thinking like...
Well, I mean...
Like they essentially, you have the opening offer, and then you have like the conclusion.
Yeah.
That could be a bit, but like I said, I don't know. Like, in my mind, there's room there for Hober to be like, but wait, there's more. While she's got the phone metaphor, like the finger metaphorically over the 911 button. And obviously that's what's happened.
Sheban's light. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, obviously that happened at some point along the way because Hober knows. Like, it almost would have been better if Hober didn't know. If even Hober had to be kept out of the loop, but they needed to get him close to the ship.
Is it possible that, like, Shia Sinter reached out to Ben's light and, like, they had a communion and they all kind of decided in the moment that it was actually worth it? Because that's kind of what Ben's light says at the end. Like, yeah, we're sacrificing 10% of our population, but it's a small price to pay for us to be eternally free. Mm-hmm. So, like, is that, like, Shia Sinter? Because but I don't know. It might be a good question for Goyer. Like, when exactly, was there any reason that they would stage something merely for our benefit? Like, in your mind, did she have to have, like, a glimmer of a disagreement so that she could send that connection? I don't know. I mean, that's...
With Hober in private, I don't know.
You're right, because that's the audience is...
a fatal flaw. Here's the thing. Like, you mentioned earlier... A lot of this dissonance I'm feeling is maybe from the skipping of one of those 3-stage Martin reveals, right? You skip stage 2, and then you just make everybody feel like a fool, except for the people who picked it up instantly.
Or the people who had no idea, yeah.
Yeah, or the people who didn't catch that there was anything happening at all, I guess.
Right.
I needed stage 2, because stage 2 is usually where I figure it out, or I come to, like, an approach sort of near the actual answer, and then I can feel like I earned that reveal. In a lot of these cases, I'm getting stage 1, I'm going, there's something here, but I have no context to put this in, and then I'm getting stage 3, and I'm just like, I didn't feel like I earned it, I didn't feel like the show earned it. It just feels like I'm getting information that seems completely counter to everything I got before. So, this is another one of those things that's like, I don't think it's a fatal flaw. I think there's wiggle room in there, even in the words she says. You know, it might be that it's not necessarily she says we cannot bear taking that risk. She might be talking about we cannot bear Empire learning that we've talked to you, right? And so we have to hide all this. Like, there's ways to twist those words, but I don't know, man. It's something about it feels wrong. It just feels bad. It's not necessarily a thing I can point to and say factually, here's the problem, except with the exception of that visual effects stuff, I think. To me, it just feels bad.
Yeah, you're still mad that your buddy said he stole your car, or said your car is stolen, but he just parked it up the street. I get it. Yeah. But it's
always going to happen to me. But my car is going to be up the street for the rest of my life, right? Like, he's going to come back and do it every day, every time I wake up. Because if I ever come back to these episodes, it's going to feel like that all over again.
I do wonder, like, if you do a soup to nuts rewatch of this season, how much, like, and I also wonder, like, is there any way that we missed a second reveal? Like, you know, because, like I said, the thing is like, I can't say it's total bullshit, because we were saying, and we have been saying that every subsequent week, there is still some big reveal with the Spacers. There's more to that story. It was clearly, like, you know...
It was weird that they didn't take the deal. Yeah.
And it, like, made so much more sense that, like, she who is Sinter comes, like, why did she make a special trip, bring the whole fucking home swarm? It's an unprecedented thing she's ever done. Because she knew this is the last time she was going to see her daughter.
Sure.
I like I said, I think if there's one track that wasn't laid, there was 9 tracks that did connect. And I think we get into the artistry of it. Again, Lee Pace, amazing. This scene where, if you combine it with the last scene, like, it gave me the feeling that this is like a deep in addiction addict who's just had his fix and it is fleeting. It is going away. This latest fix is not lasting at all. Like, you can see the joy that he's had for exterminating these people, like, fade in seconds. And then he needs another one. So he comes back, is like, now what? He's like, he's like high off of this action.
Oh, I just think it's who he is through and through. I mean, this is the most Day thing Day has ever done. If you look at how he treated that servant that was like fraternizing with Dawn too much, right? Like, he takes her out to the middle of the garden.
It wasn't just fraternizing. Turns out she was trying to subvert the entire Genetic dynasty. But yes.
Yeah, but he takes her out to the garden, and he doesn't just kill her. He doesn't just kill the people who were involved in this plot. He kills anybody who's ever known her. The entire memory. He's wiping away her in that scene. What he's trying to do here is wipe away the Foundation.
Yeah. Like,
anyone that's ever heard of Foundation is gone.
As Bel Rio said, like, look, I gave you the one atrocity. And I also thought it was really strong for him not to mention Glaywin. He's just keeping in, like, this is just business. I'm setting aside the personal. Look, I gave you your atrocity because I understand in your logic you have to brutalize someone as a punishment, but I did this so we wouldn't have to do it again. Now you're...
And I do like that he says no here.
That
seems like a bridge too far for even for Glaywin, you know? He can't say, well, there's a greater good still to be done by you, so...
And I also love how they weave that Bhagavad Gita, I think as I pronounce it, theme. That, like, the warrior just, I don't think this is a just war. And the god is saying essentially, look, just play your role and do your duty in life, and everything's going to work out. And Bel did, and it did. Mm-hmm. You know, like, this was like, if Bel had refused to take the mission, if Bel had done this, like, none of Harry's plan wouldn't have worked. Or maybe it would have worked out in some other infinite complex way.
Sure.
But I really like how that paid off, that, like, his faith in Glaywin and himself and his sailors was rewarded. And honestly, the whole theme of this episode is faith rewarded.
Yeah, I think so.
And go ahead.
I was going to talk about Hober a little bit because he, gets a lot of dialogue here. He gets to reveal the plan as it stood. He talks about how the plan was, to get Day to bring. He says ordering your entire fleet to Terminus, which makes me wonder if this is everything Empire's got.
I think so. Warships, not obviously civilian like transport craft and things, because as someone pointed out. Maybe it was even Pete when we were like Demerzel took a jump ship back to. So there's at least one.
Yeah.
She's going to be busy as a sole UPS driver for the Imperium for the next couple of years. But yeah, so like I think and holy moly, there was hundreds, if not thousands, of ships in orbit. I didn't fully appreciate like that it was the entire fleet. It wasn't just a 20th. It was like the entire galactic fleet.
Apparently, yeah. And then Hober, his lines about as a frog's ass watertight. He's endlessly entertaining even when he's getting his ass kicked.
Is he still? Because my headcanon is that he's still provoking Empire because it's not done. Like he needs Empire to give that order to jump and confirm it for it. Like he's not stopping pissing Day off until Day commits. Like, he has to give the order, the jump has to execute.
I think he already had. I'm not sure. Because I don't think he starts beating his ass.
Oh, he reveals his bait. Yeah, so he's just doing it for his own satisfaction.
Yeah. I mean, he's got nothing to lose. He's dead, right? He knows it.
Yeah.
Now he's just getting his jabs in. It's like Bell, but glad he actually got to kick Day out of an airlock.
Did you have any problem with the super command sequence that disabled all boats and tubes and also transposed everybody's hyperspace lanes into each other?
No.
Okay, I didn't either.
That seems all technically reasonable, I guess.
Yeah.
You don't want people trying to jump, trying to leave a ship that's about to jump,
One thing I was confused is the Imperial Guard.
Yeah, they're slow to act.
They're either telling me... the only thing they could possibly be telling me is that the Imperial Guard, much like the one that was working for Rue and Sereth, is like not a big fan. Like this is how far the Empire has degenerated that even the Praetorian Guard kind of is like, should we jump in and save this guy? Fuck, they'll just decant another.
Yeah, I felt like they waited a little too long for Day to say, don't don't intervene here.
That's what I'm saying.
He
if he had said that, he should have said it immediately. But I think I actually think that they're trying to say that this is another example of the Empire losing control. Like his most loyal,
maybe so,
guards and supporters are kind of hesitant to save him. Because they should. I did, and that's my first thing. Because like when I first watched this, I'm like, man, I'm not sure that I really like that we have this big showy fight scene when we could have spent time like explaining some things better. But like the more I watch it, the more I love the fight scene, and the more I don't think you need extra explanation, or the fact that I don't think there's an extra explanation that would help. But like I love how just like this day. I've pointed out all season long, just more vulgar than the other days. Like the degeneracy in his like mental and philosophical outlook, and he's just like, he's just like a pig rooting in the mud. Like he loves this. He spits blood over Bella Rios' face, which made him look awesome. Dude, by the way,
I just love the toxicity between these guys, right? Because what you're really dealing with is like ideologies. You're dealing with a guy who rules. Says, "Oh, you didn't do this because I needed a symbol. You did it because I told you to."
Right.
Versus Bell, who has a sense of morality, and that's what they're fighting about here.
Yeah.
And just the acid between these characters, right? It feels like this fight needed to happen, and it's the only time it could happen. Like if you remember, Day took off his aura to prove that he was not afraid of the mighty Harry Seldon, right? Mm-hmm. And so now he doesn't have it, and this is the only time that Bell could actually get a punch in on him.
No, I love that. I love how, like, as Day is in the middle of talking about how you puny humans, essentially, with your little lives don't matter, and Bell takes that to spit blood right back in his face. And then the castling, I thought that was another great moment where it's like, as soon as it happened, I'd forgotten about it, and as soon as it happened, I'm like, a fucking course, he castled. And it's one of those things where it's like, it doesn't matter. It would be cheap, except for they're all doomed anyway, right?
Sure.
And it's like, it's just a moment of defiance to a god, and these individual things of fighting when, like Harry's getting at the end of the episode. Like, why do you keep fighting? Why do you, in helpless situations? And just to shine him on, and I will say this, I cannot even believe I'm saying this, but Bell Rios outwore Cleon's own fucking outfit.
Dude,
he looks so badass with that chainmail blouse, them shiny hammer pants, and that blood-covered face. Oh my god!
If Glaywin could only see,
if Glaywin could only see, what a fucking badass.
I did not notice until the scene where they were drinking wine that he castled into his clothes, and I'm like, of course he did. That's perfect.
And I think that Ben Daniels, his physicality changed. He's like, his performance changes a bit as soon as Day's clothes castle onto him. It's like a subtle difference, but I love it. Bell Rios, a great character. And then these are my two new favorite characters, and it's sad because they're going to die, but what a way to go out.
Did you wonder if you could castle somebody through an aura? If you castle their clothes, unless there's some kind of protective field that the aura gives you against that too, I would think you would just castle right into their bracelet as well.
If anyone could, I think the Foundation, because they understand both technologies. So if there's a way to defeat an aura through castling, they could do it. So yeah, I would probably be certain. Now you could probably build an aura that couldn't. It's like an arms race, but I would suppose it right now. Yeah.
Is it going to be a problem seeing a lot of? Well, are we going to see a lot of castling devices? I guess unless Harry also said, all these, crates full of castling devices are important to protect too, and brought them into the vault, that we probably don't have any right now. All the ones we know of were blown up, most likely.
I will say that's a dangerous road for science fiction, because I've seen like beshitted Star Wars and Star Trek fans where they get to the point where, like, in Star Trek's 1,000 episode history, there's a technological solution to everything that would solve the crisis that no one can solve at this very point. Mm-hmm. And it's
also one implemented by the very characters who are in the scene scratching their heads.
Exactly. But if you will never enjoy science fiction, if you're like, well, why can't the magic technology save them this time? It's like, the best they can do a good job of like building a little fence of logic around it. And I think this show does this very well. But like, I'm not going to get into like, well, why don't they just castle when You know, why didn't Gale? I was like, yeah, I don't want to become a big shitted Foundation fan.
I think the show's inviting that, though. That's the problem, is the show, with its tricksiness, is inviting those kinds of interrogations.
That's what I'm saying. It is baiting some insane theory crafting. So we'll see if that gets reined in.
How disorienting would it be for Day in this scene? That's what I was thinking. Like, he's standing inside the airlock watching Bell go out, and suddenly he can't breathe and he's freezing, and like, his last thought is, what the fuck?
And what sucks is that he will never know it, because when he gets decanted, he won't remember that he got fucking owned by Bell Rios. But it's like, Lee Pace puts it out there, man. Like, I talked about, I shared on my Twitter, like, when Becky bites into his ass, the face he makes, the faces he made when he got thrown, because like the shock of like, I fucking did it, and now I'm dying in space. How did this?
He didn't even know castling was a thing.
Yeah. And, of all the people thrown out into space I've seen this season, this year of television watching, which has been more than you'd expect, this is one of the more scientifically accurate. I could do without the super rapid freezing, but I'm not even sure if anything more than this snot and sweat and blood froze, Pretty good accurate depiction of someone getting thrown out into the vacuum of space. Kudos. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you buy that this Imperial vessel has a cleaning pod that has 24 hours of oxygen and can be jettisoned?
I don't know what they mean by cleaning pod. Are people going out into space to clean the surface of the thing, or is it automated?
Scraping the windows.
If it's automated, definitely not. There would be no need, unless that's a storage compartment for the automated robot to get tools out of or something.
Here's my thing, and if I was on a writer's staff, I might have, because, like, in my experience, if a warship has one thing, it's going to have a bunch of those things, right?
Sure.
Like, especially when it's something mundane as like a cleaning module or something like that. Can you imagine like a USS aircraft carrier and they only have one toilet scrubbing brush? Or, if they've got the pneumatic piston for their the catapult, they probably got 5 of those things below deck, right?
Yeah.
I wish he had said, this flagship, because me and Glaywin were doing this infiltration, is outfitted with a single-use, like, infiltration pod that could keep one operative alive for 24 hours. And, I only got one. I'll give it to you. I don't know. It's a very small thing in Constanza, but, like, it did bug me. That's like a fucking clean. What is that? But whatever.
Couldn't they have shot them out the? Well, I guess maybe the landing pod things were. The landing chutes were closed off.
Yeah, you couldn't do torpedoes because, like, they either have 0 or 1,000 of those things. So it's like if they can launch one torpedo and fit, they could probably launch a bunch. So it's like they had to have something that wasn't something launched from a tube, that wasn't a lifeboat, that was something that like the spacers wouldn't know was standard equipment. But yeah, I'm a cleaning pod, whatever. I'm happy it wasn't a total party wipe. Because it would have been, honestly, almost too much if Constant had died, too. Yeah, because there's another type of, like, a nihilism. Like, if, like, Game of Thrones almost got to that to some people. Like, Game of Thrones in some of those seasons had killed, like, maybe 1 or 2 more beloved characters. Maybe people like, you know what, fuck this. I'm tired of getting kicked in the nuts, like, all the time. Like, give me something. So, I'm glad they gave me something with Constant. And their final goodbye, the hope, the joke that didn't lead them...
Yeah.
Perfect.
My name's Hope. No, but wouldn't it be something?
Such a great final line.
Does it bother you that Harry does not decide to save Hober? Because he certainly has the ability.
I don't think it's a decision. I think it's just the way... And I think Hober must have gone into this with his eyes open. He's the only one that... Well, I guess him and the Spacers are the ones that went in. Bel Rios kind of fig leafs the other moral side of it by saying, I know my soldiers and they would be cool with this.
Hober wasn't like, do I have to die? I mean, you're going to save all of Terminus. Why can't you save me too?
He saves everyone on Terminus. That's a good... Like, could you provide him with one extra castling device? How far does castling devices work?
Right? I don't know. Maybe he would have just got it
clearly Harry.
So I didn't think it was castling. Harry says the vault has many abilities, and I don't think everybody castled in there. I don't think they have to. I think Harry can just grab people and bring them into the vault.
You're right. When I say cast, I don't mean they literally use castling devices. I mean like whatever teleportation technology the castling thing is behind, that Harry must be able to do that without like a beacon. Because I imagine that's what it is. It's a point-to-point transporter, and these are like beacons somehow. And he can just do it. Like he's just essentially the Enterprise. He can just beam people up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like
it had to, because like I thought like I could just believe that in the time it takes Emperor to go from the planet side to orbit, that you could, if you hustled, got like, I don't know, I thought of thousands, I don't know about tens of thousands of people in, like if you use, because it's not that far, it's not a big march, you just march them into the vault. But like Lewin, there's no fucking way he could have made it there.
And
so like
Polly,
there
like
was some
we
kind
saw
of
him not get there. So
although, like I said, I rewatched that scene and they do not show Polly get enveloped by the wave. They cut away just the frame before, which is the excuse for the shenanigans, I'm sure. But
they do for sure.
Yeah,
but he was definitely teleported into the vault. There was no chance he walked into it.
Yeah, but I don't think that Harry can save everyone everywhere. Like I don't think Harry could save people from Trantor, from Terminus. So I guess it's probably just out of range.
Why not? We don't know.
Because it's not literally magic. It's technology just indistinguishable from it.
Yeah, but we have zero idea what the range on that is.
True.
No idea.
I'll have to wait for... And then, hey, did you want to make a Foundation technical manual and release that? I will pay upwards of $39.99. If it's a hardcover coffee table book, maybe up to $69.99.
Damn. I already pre-ordered the art book, so I'm in for that too. Why not?
So then you've got the well, I guess we got to go to Dawn. I forget, or do you want to?
Yeah, we pretty much talked about the scene where Bell takes them over and ejects Constant, and then they head off to share some wine. We'll get back to that scene here in a second. But Dawn breaks Sereth out of her quarters and they flee together. I don't know about this scene. How did Sereth get out of this hood? It was always I was always under the impression that when someone was black bagged like this, they stayed black bagged.
I believe Demerzel said to take the queen into custody and confine her to quarters before Day could come and decide what to do with her. So
seems like she's already decided.
I think it's. I did not think that about the black bags. In fact, I feel like people have been brought in and out of black bags in the previous season. I just thought that's just like your standard detain and arrest device. And as soon as she got back to her quarters, they'd let her go because it's tricky. Like I think Demerzel's still trying to try to play this scenario out where she's still trying to do the thing that she wanted to do, which is frame Sereth for murder. Have Day decide on his own free will, quote unquote, to have her executed, and then she can get things back exactly how they were, and then she's happy, right? Or as close as it gets to an mentally enslaved robot for happiness. Doesn't that make sense? So, like, she's not going to, like, just keep her bagged up and throw her in a dungeon. She's going to treat her how a noble lady should be taught, like, you don't murder.
But she says there's
Sansa
all this
Stark,
evidence. Yeah. Like, she tells Dawn there's there's actual hard evidence that she planned the assassination. Mm-hmm. I think you should take that prisoner into custody and keep them there. I don't think you let them sit in their quarters. I think you take them to a cell. I believe that it's like I said, like it, but it's like you don't put Sansa Stark in the fucking dungeons. I mean, maybe Joffrey would, but you keep her locked up in in a tower cell or something like that. But it's not like it, it doesn't look like a dungeon. So if Sansa Stark had tried to kill the king, you probably would keep her locked up.
Didn't Sansa Stark try to kill the king a time or two? But anyway,
at some point, but probably when she was in power.
I think your point is. I mean, I guess I just disagree. I think it was fine that she's held. I think that Demerzel's supremely confident in her ability to hold on to the queen. Now, maybe she shouldn't be. Maybe she doesn't see Dawn being as ballsy as he is. That's the other thing. Is I think Demerzel at this point is
literally fixed his balls to impregnate her. Like,
I guess
she knows about all
that. She does
that.
reveal she knows all that to
she knows everything that's happened. This is one of the questions we had. Are people watching? Yes, Demerzel's been watching everything.
In fact, I'm morally certain that the reason the kid emperors are given a tour of all the places where they can't be is just so they feel safe to go plot treachery, so Demerzel can keep it's like the parent saying, "This is your plotting zone. I could never hear anything that goes on in this room, but that's the room that's most wired for sound."
Totally.
So where were we? I just think that she's trying to still maintain the illusion that Day is in control, and giving him the ultimate choice to kill her and treating her like a noble lady up until that point. I feel like it's a Demerzel move.
Okay, maybe it's just a mistake at the end of the day, on her part. Anyway, we go back over to Terminus, where the ships continue to explode. Bell and Hober share their fancy wine as they await their demise, and they're killed during an unlikely toast. Let's just call it that.
I love it. The exact moment of destruction, they clink glasses. It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, this is all Badaga Vita stuff. You know, him saying that, hey, 3 weeks ago I thought I was going to die in this prison colony. Me and Glaywin knew that we're never going to make it out of this alive, but there is glory and honor in the fight, you know? And the dying. Like, there's a nobility to choosing this and saving the lives of trillions.
Yeah, we've all got to go out. What better way? And I like the I guess destruction of pretensions here, right? Like at the beginning when they both sip the wine, they're like, "Oh yeah, that's got a sweetness. And then they're both staring out the window, looking at the ships exploding, and realizing we have very few moments left. Why are we doing this? Why are we lying to ourselves? We don't have to pretend to like
this shit. Yeah.
And then they're just like, yeah, it's a terrible bottle.
Tastes
and then
like
they
Becky's
toast to Becky's asshole, which is kind of perfect.
Yeah.
I love it. Then we go back over to Demerzel, who's meeting with her council here. She gets word of the fleet's destruction, but that's not the only bad news. Dawn and Sereth are currently announcing to the public that Day is dead and they'll be getting married instead. Of course, turns out not to be Dawn and Sereth, but rather her servants using facial scramblers. Demerzel then gets a call from the real Dawn and Sereth, who are headed away from Trantor on a ship. Dawn makes an emotional plea for not coming after them, but her programming mandates that she hunt them down and kill them. I think.
This is one I'm very curious to see if there is a definitive answer that Goyer is willing to give about the final disposition of this Dawn. Because, first of all, I want to say that this is something I was trying to get to at the previous scene, but like I believe that Demerzel is just overwhelmed. Like she is responsible for the day-to-day functioning of the Galactic Empire, and then all this Cleon stuff, and she's had to murder Dawn, or she had to murder Dusk. Mm-hmm. Day just profoundly disappointed her, and then he got murdered too. And now she thinks she's have to murder Dawn. She is like really overwhelmed. But my thing is like, I felt like Dawn kind of talked himself to safety, and then Sereth put herself back into danger by saying, I don't know if people forget about us. We got a rightful heir, and he might be something like, damn, don't. It's like, I don't know. I don't know what Sereth got into Sereth. Except for, the thing is like, I think Bel Rios has defanged the Empire for like at least a decade. Judging on what it looks like it takes the Empire to build like space rings or build the elevator, you know, they have vast resources, but they're not unlimited. And I think it will take them some time to rebuild, and they don't have the spacers to make the technology that they have work. So like the Empire has permanently been defanged as far as I can understand.
And it's not just defanged. I think this, more than anything we've seen, is the largest crack. I mean, this is a shattering. This is Empire getting terminus. Shattering into pieces and falling away from its own gravity well. Like,
yeah,
the factionization that's going to happen, the factionalization rather, that's going to happen in the Empire is going to be profound, I think, in the next 150 years. Because if you don't have that technology uniting it and keeping everyone in even nearby systems at this point under the thumb of Empire, why are they going to continue to... I mean, they might not even be... It might not be logistically possible for them to coordinate with Empire, let alone having the will of those people to do it, right?
Yeah, I've seen like science fiction franchises where you have a galactic empire that's tied together by a tightly knit strain of trade, a system of trade and military support.
They're reliant
and what
on
happens.
The rest of the empire for their.
Well, just imagine
livelihood.
if like internal combustion stopped working tomorrow. Like just imagine no more trucks, no more ships going over the ocean, no more trains. Yeah, like you've got there are but they're not going to be workarounds for everybody. There's not near enough electric and nuclear things to make civilization work in the short term, maybe not even the long term. You might not survive this collapse. So this is, if maybe the Empire can keep going with a little bit just on mystique, because is it going to be common knowledge, especially in the core worlds, that the Empire has no military vessels, but and they did have the monopoly, so people can't other than the Foundation can't monopolize on this weakness right away. But you're right, it is a giant crack.
Yeah, and if Foundation is out there jumping around the galaxy telling people, hey, we've got the solution to your problem here. Oh, you're hungry because you can't get your shipments from SETI Alpha 5, whatever. Here, we've got the solution for you, right?
Yeah, we got the superfood that cures all your ills, and we got the ships that can take it to you, and we won't even charge. Yeah,
this almost feels like a death blow to Empire, but I know that it can't be yet because we haven't gotten far enough in the show. And even it feels like a huge blow. This is what Harry's talking about, shortening.
Yes.
Because can you imagine how long it would take to erode away just a little more naturally the strength of Empire? It would take 10,000 years, right?
Yeah.
As Harry says. Here, I feel like he just accelerated that by several thousand.
Oh, and there still will be death throes from a beast this large and vast and dangerous, but
for sure.
You're right. Like the Empire, the amount of shit that they could continue to do with a fleet of 20,000 ships is going to be... I mean, they just can't do it no more.
Yeah.
It'd be like if overnight, America lost all of its aircraft carriers, all of its planes, all of its tanks, and with no ability to build more.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. It's the galactic implications are going to be vast, and I just wondered, to me, it's like, what is Demerzel? Because there is a glimmer of hope for Empire at the end. That is an Empire enjoyer. I like a glimmer of hope for the Empire. Demerzel's got something cooked up with the Prime Radiant.
Yeah,
but we also know that we know something about the Prime Meridian. God damn it! My goal for season 3 is to get through it without calling the Prime Radiant the Prime Meridian. We'll see. But we know something about Prime Radiant she doesn't. That it's a spying device as well. So even as she's gloating over her triumph, you can't help but think that Harry's still one step ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the Dawn Sareth stuff feels pretty insignificant compared to the blow that Harry dealt Empire with the destruction of the fleet. Okay, a story is one thing, but people live day-to-day lives that are going to be immediately affected by that destruction.
It reminded me of in Revelation, where God's prophesying about the Messiah and Satan, and he's like, Satan's gonna give you a blow to the heel, but you're gonna give him a blow to the head, essentially. And that's Christ got crucified, but ultimately he's going to put the screws to the devil, right? And I think that's exactly the Foundation took maybe a cosmetic blow, they lost their home, but it's nothing compared to what they did to the Empire.
I'm just thinking, story-wise, how does the Dawn and Sareth stuff factor in a way that matters,
I think I'd see there's there's tons of mule... I mean, that's going to be the new hot theory crafting is who the mule is. Is he a descendant of Dawn and Sareth? Is he a descendant of Hober and Constant? Is he... This is going to be the hotbed of theory crafting in between season 2 or 3. Who is the mule? Where did he come from?
Yeah.
Is he a degenerate emperor? Is he? Yeah. But I don't know, because like I believe that will go somewhere. But I also like, if you had to put a gun to my head right now and tell me whether Demerzel, her logic sensors trip to allow Day to escape or not, I don't have an answer. Like I might get my brains blown out, because I guess if I had to bet, the more interesting story possibility is for her to let him go and see where the chips fall. But like, I don't know if I feel like that's consistent with my understanding of how Demerzel actually would act.
Well, I like that Dawn makes a logical plea here for how his escape might be good for Empire, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's the thing that might free her in a way, is a little bit of perspective judo. Say, well, this thing could be good for the Empire because XYZ.
Or you killing us would be bad for the Empire, is I think the...
Totally, yeah. And so you don't want to do anything to harm Empire. I wonder how much we're going to play on that next time. Like her own perspective on what is good or bad for Empire. Now that we know she's the one leading it and we can directly attack these ideas, I'm kind of curious what they do with them.
And they're throwing the word interpretation, which means, I think in the show's mind, that we're supposed to think that there is some flex that she has. Yeah. And obviously she does. Like, but also she's got a bunch of rigid rules that aren't open for interpretation. Like, she wants someone to deprogram her, but she could not. Her programming would not allow that to happen.
Yeah, she mentions the puppet master pulling her own strings when she's talking to Dusk earlier, and I was thinking, well, she has to kind of pull her own strings in some ways, right? Because she has to reason what is good or bad for Empire.
Right. I wonder, do you think that the Cleon, because that's what I'm saying, it goes back to that scene in the first season where Cleon's saying the programming is nearly complete. I am wondering if, like, the first few years of him and Demerzel's association, he have to keep making modifications because she kept on finding, like, loopholes. And, or was he just, like, I don't know, maybe he spent his entire life in intellect bending his, putting her into an intellectual, philosophical box. But if so, good job. Lasted 600 years. I don't think any program I first compiled lasted 6 minutes, man. Right off the jump. Just hit compile and it worked? What? Mm-hmm. And the stakes are an android will kill me if it doesn't? Nah, I don't. Yeah, I was never that good a programmer.
All right, just as Salvor and Gale and Harry are all getting comfortable with the idea of Tellum's death, she returns in the form of a murderous Josiah who tries to kill Gale but ends up killing Salvor when she sacrifices herself to save Gale. And later that night, they hold a funeral for Salvor.
I always think it's funny when you are seeing this group funeral pyres. Like, are you just going to sit there and watch this person burn to, like, at some point you're just like, all right, it's getting gross now. This is smelling like bacon. I'm getting hungry. We gotta get out of here.
Or every single hair is burning now. I can't stand this. I gotta go.
Yeah.
Because it's like bored. It's got to be horrific. Like the body's going to take a while to burn. I'm bored. I'm leaving.
That too. Yeah, it takes a lot of calories for the heat to dissolve a human body. But
I want to know how they get her to sit up like this. Do they construct a jig that they put her in until rigor mortis sets in, and then now they can pose her up here?
They also plastered her up.
No funeral for Josiah. Betrayer Josiah, I guess, controlled by Tellum. No funeral for him. It's just Salvor. Fuck Josiah. We threw his body in the ocean.
Nah, he gets a mural with a green slash on his neck. That's the best we can do for the betrayer.
Yeah, don't let your mind get taken over and be forced to commit murder, because these people are not gonna honor you at all.
It is a cute scene. I do think that this was vital, because without the death, like if Hober and Bell die, I don't think there is enough cost that the protagonist played that all these other arguments are talking about it being tricksy and false deceptive, they would have like even more, because it would feel very hollow. But they really got, like, I always thought Salvor like never looked more appealing than when she's sitting there with the kids, kind of like fucking with them with the coin, and she really seems like she was maturing into like someone that's comfortable in her own skin and knows where she's placed in the world. And just as that's happening and everything looks all right in the kingdom of Harry, this shocking thing happens. Mm-hmm. I thought that was played, and I thought that also they did excellent work showing that this is very traumatic. This is Gale losing yet another person. And the
Not just
optimism
person,
too.
her daughter, right? Like
her daughter, that she felt, like that's one thing Tellum got her on, that she feels guilty, that she hasn't really bonded with, and this person took a literal bullet for her and is now dying. And in her last few minutes, she's got this extreme optimistic take that, like, hey, Mom, this means that we're not doomed to determinism. We can actually change the future, which was a beautiful moment too. And yeah, I think that this felt like this paid the freight for the rest of the episode. Like, this was shocking. I didn't expect it to happen. I was curious to see how they were going to, again, load them up into the cryopods. But I liked how this ended. And my question to you is, are we 100% sure that Tellum's dead?
how could we be?
Ooh, I don't like that answer.
How could we be? I mean, she could have jumped into somebody else before Josiah died. Like, this is the problem with the stuff that borders on magic, right? And the Metallics, more than anything, I think, border on magic.
Yeah. Well, and the other corollary that you can do anything as long as you do it well is another one, which is every time you do it, it has to be better. Like, you have to top yourself if you're doing these difficult things. And the degree of difficulty and maintaining people's suspension of disbelief gets higher and higher. So it's like, at the end of season 2, we're already asking, are people really dead? That'd be something to be concerning to me. I think that they like that. To me, I want to take a start. Again, you can do anything as long as you do it well. But I'm of the opinion that if Tellum survived somehow after telling her that, after we hear Josiah, who's there with her, saying he can feel her die with him, if she ends up being the mule, some kind of psychically jacked mule, I don't know. That would be a tough one to do well, I think.
Yeah. I could definitely see it happening, but also I don't necessarily want it to.
It's a great scene. Like, I thought 3 generations of Seldons essentially, all embracing as the youngest generation is as another sacrifice to brightening the future. I thought was another beautiful moment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Constant floats in space where Terminus used to be as her oxygen runs low. Suddenly she sees the vault and is taken inside it, where she sees not only was Polly saved by Dr. Seldon, but so was every single soul on Terminus, including Glaywin. I figured the vault would remain. I didn't see a reasonable
you called that
explanation for them being able to destroy it. I did not see huge switcheroo number 3, which undermines all the praise I gave them last episode. That's so I'm not as offended by this as I am about the Gale Harry stuff, because it is what it is. But like, I gave so much praise about the audacity of actually destroying this planet last episode and what a huge swing that was. Turns out it was not a swing at all. It was a strike. Yeah. They fucking missed. I don't like this from that perspective. It makes episode 9 retroactively worse, right?
I don't know about that. I have a hard time saying that because I was made a reasonable interpretation and got excited about the possibility of storytelling from a plot beat, that them undoing it, as long as they did it well, is something I'm going to have a negative reaction to. Like, I don't know if that's fair.
It certainly diminishes what I felt about episode 9. I thought episode 9 was this huge swing.
Well, I mean,
like I said,
I can't tell you how to feel. I can tell you how I felt, which is like when Constant's there, I'm like, I wonder what's going to happen. And then when the vault shows up, I started laughing. I'm like, God damn it, Jim is fucking right. And then my next thought is like, oh shit, Jim's right. This is actually going to be bad. But I tell you what, man, when Polly stepped out, I started getting choked up. When Glaywin stepped out, I got really choked up. And then, like, I don't think we talk enough about the music. I think the Foundation main theme is really awesome.
Amazing. I wanted to bring that up.
And the way it integrates into the various scenes this season has been amazing. And the way the music swelled, and when you just panned up and you saw the massive humanity, this arc of humanity that Harry Seldon, by thine own hand, had saved, I got really emotional. And to me, it's like, that's the definition of doing it well. That I wasn't rolling my eyes. That every and it's again, it's the direction, it's the music, it's the Harry. Like, I want to believe that Harry saves, Like, that's the thing, is I talk about, like, I find it impossible to not make comparisons between this and Dune and Warhammer, and how much I love Warhammer and its grim darkness. But the reason you put up with its grim darkness is every once in a while the Emperor fucking protects. And that's like that's what keeps you reading the rest of the bullshit that happens, is because every once in a while you get a happy ending, and I felt like this was earned. Dr. Selden protects.
All right. Yeah. I don't disagree. It's a beautiful moment. It's a beautiful image. The music is amazing here. Foundation theme is awesome. I just wish I could go back and have not said the things I said about episode 9 in retrospect, right?
Yeah. I will say this, that like that's where I'm saying that the death of Hober and Bell was crucial, because if they had staggered out of that light, that would have taken the genuine emotion I was feeling and turned it instantly saccharine, and I probably would have hated it. So like, again, to me, they threaded the needle, and this is a high degree of difficulty to pull off. I don't expect everybody, like this might be the Carrie Strug broken ankle. Bella Corolla coming out. God damn, I always get that. It's not Bella Lugosi. Well, whoever the old fucking coach was going on dragging her. It was kind of that level, but fuck it, got it enough to win the gold for me.
All this indistinguishably magical technology makes me wonder about Harry earlier on, and we've talked around this kind of about the Invictus. How much technology is out there that I guess is waiting to be rediscovered that Harry could harvest for his magical tech? Because all this vault stuff he created 150 years ago as a professor at Streeling or whatever, doing research on Trantor. Where did he get all that? How did he come up with that? He's a brilliant mathematician, but
because I've been thinking about this for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm super curious to know, like, how did he get so far ahead of the curve?
So back to the Warhammer Dune thing. One thing about those universes is like you have a big roar with AI and robots, and humans win by the skin of their teeth, and they ban all that technology. Mm-hmm. But there's a cost. Like, that technology was good for humanity. It made a lot of things better, stronger, faster, more efficient, and they've got workarounds. Like in Dune, you've got the Mentats, right? The guys that mainline the spice, and they roll their eyes back in their head, and they do insane abacus calculations in their heads. They kind of get around the need for computers. And Warhammer, you've got servitors and essentially human brains instead of computers piloting starships, kind of like what they're doing in Foundation. Mm-hmm. But there's always a cost. Like, you almost never, like, you take a step back in technological advancement because you're just shunting off a huge area where humans could benefit from, right? So my headcanon is that the Empire, as sophisticated as doesn't hold a candle to where they were pre the robot wars, when we were with hand in hand having robot support help us. So like what Harry's doing is he's going back without any blinders in terms of like legalities and moralities. He's going back and rediscovering all this research. I wonder if the Calais is a indication of that. That's something that he's awakened from thousands of years ago. But I think he's just essentially, he's not inventing things. He's just he's reapplying things that humanity forgot in our technological stagnation.
Yeah, that would make a certain amount of sense. Let's go over to Gale grieving her daughter's death by trying to figure out how or if it changed the future. And Harry explains they can't know, but just like the loss, his loss of Yana, he says the losses can be used as fuel to try to make them matter, essentially. Take the pain and the what-ifs and weave them into a narrative that propels us forward. I keep going because Yana can't. It's a beautiful scene. How do you deal with a loss this big? You give it meaning.
You make it matter. Like, it's not like don't let history decide. You get out there and you make it matter.
Give it meaning through your actions. Take that and use it.
Yeah, I thought this is a scene, and it's essentially this is I don't often think of Jared Harris as like this physically powerful performance, like a physical presence. I always think of him like an intellectual presence, Mm-hmm. But like, I remember when we were watching Lincoln and he was like Ulysses S. Grant, and I'm like, God damn, he's actually a pretty good Grant. And like when he was like beating that Mentalic to death in the first episode, I'm like, God, he's actually got and climbing that cliff. Like it didn't strike me as ridiculous as I thought, because it turns out Jared Harris is also kind of like a formidable character. And I think all that stuff came together in this scene. Like, he's just so damn good. You want to like Harry. You want to believe in Harry. Mm-hmm. You want to believe that Harry can protect and it's under control. And and not because he's like this untouchable, unaccountable, like Wizard of Oz character. It's like he's very Christ-like. The whole idea that why Christ gets us is because he lived among us. He has experienced the loss of family and friends, and he knows what that feels like. And Harry talks about, like, he's not blowing sunshine up Gale's ass. I've lost the people that were very closest to me, and like have philosophized it enough that even think that like maybe if they'd lived, it would have been bad for the galaxy because I would have been complacent, and we wouldn't be trying to shorten the darkness. Mm-hmm. This is another amazing scene.
Yeah, it's moments like this that that endear me to Harry, whereas I sometimes look at him and think, well, he's simply a man lost in his own legacy, and he wants to be the guy who saves humanity so bad that he can't let any of this go. It's moments like this that turn that around and say, well, why? What is his drive here, and is it ultimately a good one, whether he has a huge ego or not? Because he does have a huge ego. And bring it back 100%. Around at the end of this episode, I really like that Gale is able to, for the first time ever, I think, convince him to change his mind about something.
Yes, which is another thing I think that a huge part of this episode is there's huge character development between Gale and Harry. They're, for the first time, more of a true partnership. Uh-huh.
Instead of master and apprentice, it's more equals here. And I think that is a place that feels really good after all this time.
Yeah. And Gale can admit that she can't do it alone. She is like, maybe I'm the chosen one, but there need to be more of us.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get there, because I think it's kind of hilarious. All right, Demerzel decants 3 clones at once, something that's never been done in the history of the dynasty.
Oh, the rare triple decantation. We'll see what the Eastern German judge says about this.
Don't worry. Nothing to worry about. Yeah, it's not normal, but nothing to worry about. I've got the Prime Radiant, and I see wonderful things in our future. There's something really macabre, almost, in a way, about them stumbling out of these the breathing.
It's very Frankenstein's monster, right?
It's zombie Frankenstein's monster. Something really fucked up and dark.
Mechanistic too. Like these 3 gentlemen all staggering forward in the exact the same way and going to their head, and like even like the ragged breathing, everything. I mean, the Empire plots don't miss. This shit is just so fucking cool. And the idea that, like, I think they came out of that pod not even knowing who they were until that ship started flashing. And one of my questions is, like, is there some kind of, like, catch-up period? Like, how far back did their memories go? Like, obviously, I don't think Dawn, Dusk, or Day remember their last moments. But how does Day remember going off to Terminus? Does he remember pushing the button? Does he, like, what does he remember? What doesn't he remember? Because, like, Dusk is with it enough to recognize the Prime Radiant and ask Demerzel a good question, but they all seemed like they're just not quite fully rebooted in this scene.
Agreed, yeah. And I do question what they're going to tell Day about how much he remembers, and if not, what they're going to tell him about Foundation. Because as far as Day is concerned, Foundation is destroyed, or at least Harry Seldon is dead.
I think Demerzel thinks that too. Like, they're not going to suspect. That as well.
Does this Day get the information that it was actually a huge failure on the Terminus mission? He has to, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, at bare minimum, the Emperors have to know that the fleet's going to be has gone. And to me, this is going to be yet more acrimony from the brothers. Can you imagine the fury that Dusk is going to have? That like, okay, maybe I just sat on the throne and painted, but at least I didn't lose our fucking fleet.
Yeah.
And the
totally.
new Dawn's going to be like, seriously, I got to run an empire without a fucking fleet? Like, there's always been this jealousy of Day and like second guessing and all that. But like, I think if we come back and see, it's going to be, oh boy.
They're definitely going to throw the idea of making a mark on history in his face, right? Oh, you made a mark.
And the thing
People
I
will
really
remember
like
you
about
for all time, Day.
I'm glad you mentioned the fact that like the asymmetrical nature of the information. Is it possible? Because that's one of the things that's like, oh my God, how are they going to get back to first foundation, second foundation kind of control? I wonder if they are going to flip, because does the second foundation know that the first foundation survived? Like, I'm sure Harry and Gale will, maybe, because of the way the Prime Radiant works. But Harry gave up Harry gave up the Prime Radiant. I'm wondering if if they're going to reverse the roles they had in the books, where the second foundation was the right hand to the first foundation's left. I wonder if now the first foundation is going to just act as if they are destroyed and dead and be the puppet masters of the second foundation.
Interesting.
It's a radical departure, but like, be interesting. And it's another way where it's like, I'm not as pissed off that they dodged the cool thing, because I think they're just doing a different version of the cool thing I was open to do, and I'm just a little, residual butthurt that they didn't do my cool thing, which is always a danger of following totally. These type of things.
I could see that as a possibility, given just the way that, I mean, Harry's not going to have the information about the vault anymore, right? Because the vault's Prime Radiant is gone now. It's in the hands of Demerzel. Is that right?
I believe so. And it's a I don't know, like quantum superposition, how many different superpositions going to be in the quantum state? Like, could you have? But to me, that's telling me that there is now there's a pros and cons of that I don't think the first foundation. Although, couldn't Harry just build another one, his own private copy?
You would think so.
Either way, I don't think the first foundation I don't think the second foundation has any, from what I can tell, a clear path to spy on the second foundation and vice versa.
Yeah, if Harry does find out that the first foundation was quote unquote destroyed, he could assume that he's the only foundation, and I think it's interesting in the context of Salvor giving that information to Dr. Selden, right? Like, Dr. Selden wasn't supposed to know that he wasn't the only foundation, the only Selden out there. Now he does, because of these infinite possibilities, right?
These little pebbles kicked loose. Yeah.
If Salvor hadn't escaped, she wouldn't have been able to save Harry and Gale, but she also, in that process, gave Dr. Selden a whole bunch of information that he didn't have and wasn't supposed to have.
But then what's really been baking my noodle, to quote the Oracle, is did Meat Sack Harry know and intend all these effects?
Right.
Or was he just trusting in psychohistory that something is going? Because that's the thing. It's like, if you go back to the Buddha Davida philosophy, is that like, you have to kind of have faith that if you play your part, things will work out. And I wonder if Harry's like, he has such faith in saying, I don't know exactly how this is going to work. I just know that I got to keep doing this and something's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Which, again, I think is really, like, it's a shame that the wavy lines of this Mentalics and stuff detracted from what I think of a lot of, again, like I said at the beginning, themes that they've been weaving since the first fucking episode coming to full fruit. Well, probably not full fruit. There's another harvest or two to reap, hopefully. But yeah, like, it's a damn shame that some of the, I guess, theatrical things got in the way of what seems to be a really, from my point of view, again, watch it 4th time, thinking about it for 2 weeks, a really, maybe not perfect, but ultimately satisfying way to conclude a superior season of science fiction television.
And this is where I like to be informationally in a story. I like for there to be a disparity between characters. Some of them know certain things. I think there's a lot of possibilities there, both for speculation on how the character would react and how this other character is going to proceed, and also emotionally. Characters making decisions that seem completely rational from their side, but are going to devastate or otherwise affect other characters who are going to react differently to them, right? That's what I always love about a show. It's one of the things we talked about Breaking Bad that it did so well. Characters knowing things that other characters don't in any given time and playing with that. I think Foundation's really set up well to do that in season 3, but it's also set up very well to start doing magical bullshit with metallics and nobody being anywhere they say they are or being who they are. It could go either way, and I'm hoping it goes the former, not the latter.
Let me ask, because Demerzel, her face is a million things at the end of the scene. When she says there's wonderful things that lie ahead, is she talking about the Empire? Is she talking about herself? Is she talking about the galaxy?
Good question.
Because I'm wondering if she sees a glimmer of a path to her own freedom through this thing, too. Because clearly, if you listen to what Harry and Dr. Selden are saying throughout the season, they've accounted for her in their plans, specifically. The
existence and
artificial beings, yeah. And I think that's very exciting.
Here's the thing I love about how they've set this up with Demerzel is she is able to speak her mind freely. It's her actions that are affected, right? She can say, I hate this man. This wish sucks. That I didn't have to kill you. I don't want to, but my programming will force me to. So in this moment, she could be saying, I see wonderful things ahead for myself, getting out of these shackles.
Right.
Not necessarily for the Empire. It could be death and destruction for the Empire. And it'd be fine for her to say it's wonderful.
Yep.
She just can't act on it. So
and she might even see... I wonder if she even sees, like, if she, I mean, it gets her programming, but if she could kill the dynasty and just end it, would she see that as a kindness? Because none of these people are happy. Like what Cleon doomed, they're like a blighted harvest. They're not happy. They're always second guessing themselves. They feel like at an instinctual level that they're like second class emperors that don't really matter. I'd really like
feels that way, certainly.
Well, I mean, but he's the one that would have the most, like, could look back and see, like the unsatisfactory nature of their lives. And there's always I go back to that one scene of the dust that we saw got disintegrated, that there's like, he doesn't want to. He doesn't feel comfortable or safe, like, the way Cleon did when he was at his end. Of course, I don't know, maybe Demerzel killed him too in some kind of elaborate ritual, but...
Yeah,
it's tasty. Like I said, Empire plot does not miss. No notes. 100%. It's our it's our little angel. Can't do no wrong.
Well, that's all we're gonna get of Empire this season. Let's go to the final scene with Harry and Gale. Harry explains that he's gonna stay with the Metallics while Gale sleeps in the cryopod, only to return once a year to inspire them as a goddess. She manages to convince him what a terrible, just on the face of it, what a terrible idea that is. And they both go into cryosleep together. I think, I don't know what got into Harry. I think this is a obvious bad idea. I mean, he's only got, how many more years does this man have? 50 years? He's going to die. If he doesn't get into the cryopod, he's going to die well before Gale can return as 152 years later as goddess. So like, what is his plan for the other 100 years or 50 years or whatever?
I think his plan is to use the rest of his life being her John the Baptist and getting them properly prepared and conditioned in the next generation of Metallics that unquestionably accept her as goddess and like establish, like train the generation that will train the others into the army. And then, by the time he's dead, they will fully.
They don't.
I mean, you just summarize psychohistory. That's like just hoping that the next generations don't, like keep playing their part. And
but he has the mechanisms here to effectively guarantee it. Like if they just slept in the cryopods, just do your sleeping in the cryopods 8 hours a day, you would effectively extend your life by a third, and you could live to something like 200 years and get to 152 years later with the mule.
Yeah.
Both of them. I mean, Harry could spend half his time in there and gain another 70, 80 years on top of his lifespan. It sounds like that's what they're going.
And the other thing is, like, if you really want to bend your noodle, did Harry suggest the first plan, so Gail would suggest this, so she would obviously come back and suggest so that she would grow a little bit the relationship. Like, you know, like where does the manipulations go? And now she's like, oh, look, Gail, I flexed and I chose your plan because it was better.
I don't like that option because I want this to be a genuine moment between the two. But
so like,
it's certainly possible.
And I gotta say that, like, and it might be, but like also it would be super satisfying if there's a false detent that, like, you know, Harry kind of hoodwinks Gale and she has to, you know, there has to be yet another fight, you know, for her to actually be his equal. Because that's like, yeah, I keep thinking of like, if you want to view this lens, like think of Mr. White and Jesse Pinkman. There's like at least 3 points in that series where Jesse thought that Walt respected him.
Sure.
I don't know if we ever got a moment where he like, you know, by the end of it, it's like, you know, there's clearly love there, but respect, I don't know. And I could see some echoes of this too.
The hilarious part of this conversation to me is that, yes, she's able to convince him to change his mind on something, but to do it, much like Jesse and Mr. White, she has to appeal to his ego. She says, there could be another crisis coming up, one that involves Harry Seldon himself, and we both know that you are the only person capable of dealing with that crisis. And he goes, good fucking point. I am awesome, aren't I?
Are you
I guess I'll change
Gale's
my mind.
Manipulating him right back?
I think so.
Yeah. No, I could see that for sure.
But I also think to his ego is the only way to make that work.
But I also think it's a real fear that, like, hey, maybe I can wrestle a rogue Mentalic down, but like you're the only one that can deal with the Harry Seldon. That might literally be true.
Sure.
Like Harry's another outlier.
Well, regardless.
Yeah.
I will say charitably, if you want to be charitable to Harry Seldon here, you can say, well, they're a family now, right? And Gale says as much. They've come to respect each other.
And I think they literally
equals.
are. I mean, yeah.
Well, yeah, adoptions and such. If you want to be charitable, you can say that he changed his mind for that reason. But it doesn't hurt to flatter his ego.
Agreed.
I do want to know exactly what their plan is here. Are they just planning on sleeping 150 years and hope the Metallics will keep it on track? Or are they going to wake up once a year like Harry wanted Gale to do?
I think that the plan, the new modified plans, I understand that they're going to spend a year now before they get in the pods. They make sure everything's running smooth, and then
because they immediately get into the pods.
But if you listen to what Gale says, she goes, "Let's spend a year both working to learn twice as fast." And then
so a year has passed between this scene and the end of it.
Yeah, and like the only thing that indicates that is the dialogue. There's no like obvious passage of time, but like that's what I think happened, and it makes sense. And I think that they're going to be like, so that gets them on a start, and it's like, okay, it's kind of like your teacher shows up and then gives you homework, and you go away and you do it and you come back. So I think that they're going to have a cycle of like they'll teach for a year, maybe sleep for a year or two, come back, see what they've learned, give them new pointers, check to see, there's essentially Groundhog Day stuff.
The vault in microcosm, right? Just shorter periods between Harry waking up.
Yeah. And they're just trying to get, like, this is all. And now I do wonder what they do past 152 years, because I don't even know Goyer knows that, because there's one interview I saw of him where it implies that the thing, or maybe Pete told me this because it's a conversation he had with him last week, that the mule plot line has special significance to Goyer. That's like his, like, that was like, the Double D's always talked about the red wedding being the thing, like, hot damn, we want to adopt this. Like, to me, I got the opinion that the mule is that for Goyer. So I wonder, like, how much he has planned out, because that's my big question is, like, once Gale gets over the mule, do we get away from Gale? Like, do we ever... Mm-hmm. And that's, like I said, I know that he's got, and he can't talk about it, but I know he has plans about, like, what do we do if we can't get, Jared Harris, or what do we do if we can't get, like, you have to plan for stuff on the things that you want to run 4 to 7 years. So, but I'm very curious to see how they do flip it. Like, once we get past, it seems like maybe next season will be the big mule plot. And once you get past that, then where do we go in terms of cast and all that? And that's apparently already mostly written, fully written. I don't know. Goyer said it was well along. The other thing he said in one of our interviews with him is that
Gale, as this narrator, is narrating from an unknown time. And so I assume it's from a future where, Foundation has prevailed. But that's not necessarily true. This could be a deathbed kind of thing for her. This could be a number of things.
But certainly from
her
the far
perspective
future looking
being
back.
the overarching perspective, I think is a clue. She will be important for perhaps the entire duration of the series. We'll see. I really like Gale talking Harry through the process of being cryo-frozen, or whatever you call it.
Just like Rach did for her. And
Yeah.
that smile of recognition, bittersweet.
Uh-huh. That was a sweet moment.
I thought so too. And then I also like the way it ends, where she invites us all as the audience to close our eyes and dream with her, essentially during the off season. I thought that was a nice way to end, quote unquote, asterisks.
Kind of
not exactly the end,
because now we're going to jump 152 years into the future, where the mule is fretting that Gale is now in his time, and he resolves to kill her at any cost.
It's interesting because they really reframe the mule as a victim here. That Gale's been tormenting him through psychic visions, maybe unintentionally. I think that's the idea.
Sure.
There's that she's causing this as much as trying to avert it. Her checking in and visiting him in the future is giving him some kind of haunted complex and fucking with his mind and driving him crazy. I love that. I love that idea.
Yeah, he is crazy.
Especially if
So
there's
it
a personal
seems.
connection he has to the Foundation or to the Empire, which is going to be.
Yeah.
You want to run down the big speculations,
I mean, there's
just off the
Tellum.
dome.
She's
Could be Tellum.
the big
Tellum
crazy
is,
one, right?
Tellum is the one that you'd have to really do that well for me to.
She already could very easily have a vendetta against her, because Gale apparently was more powerful than Tellum the entire time, right? She could mask her feelings from Tellum.
That's the other unspoken thing that you have to kind of accept, that Gale is just a giga level psychic the galaxy hasn't seen. And then I think Tellum kind of says as much, that she's like a new breed, she's like the next generation, but
She's
hasn't
surprised
practiced
at her
power.
abilities. Yeah.
She is able to raw power a very powerful telepath that's had hundreds of years of experience. That's
and
fucking
hundreds
impressive.
of people under her spell already, right?
Right. That is very impressive.
They told us she's
so-
very strong. But I don't know. Tellum is a big possibility, I think. Who else? The baby of
Constant
Hover.
Sarathan Day. Okay, you got the other one. So the unborn, we know a fact that there is currently a zygote floating around the fallopian tubes, if not the uterine lining of one Sereth, Queen of Dominion.
We know human
Cloud
lifespans in this particular time are about 150 years. We've seen that through Polly.
And he's like Harry Seldon. Would you say the mule's like Harry Seldon's age?
Yeah, he's certainly younger than Polly. I think by a good margin. Polly's 130. This guy might be 80.
And Polly was hale and hearty despite being a hardcore alcoholic for last 20, 30 years of his life.
So I say that to say this. It's possible that will change. Given the technology that Harry's dealing with, given the Foundation's influence between now and 150 years, this guy could be 200 years old.
True.
Or 152 years old. So it could literally be one of these babies that just looks like he's 90 or something.
Yeah. So both and you've also got cryopods. Although I will say that Goyer, after he heard, I wonder how much he was sweating after he heard our 9 episode, because he sent an email saying that they're well aware that they've kind of ran the gamut of the cryopods, and they'll have to think of other things in the future.
Yeah, we talked about this in the wrap up briefly, but I wanted to reiterate it here. I don't have a problem with the cryopods, because it wasn't circumstance that drove them in this time. It was an intentional decision.
Yeah, I
find
they did it well. And
Yeah.
if you and one thing that I would believe could go an infinite cycle is if you have a cult around doing something. Like that, even long after it makes sense to do it, they'll keep doing it. So like,
Sure,
getting in a cryopod on a regular basis, like you've set up something that I now, don't shy away from it. This is you've subverted my fears and made it to the main plot successfully. So, but yeah, I mean, obviously, if there's something even cooler past the mule timeline, I'm down for that as well.
Yeah. So we'll see. I do you have any other possibilities for who the mule is other than babies or Talon?
A degenerate clone of the Emperor.
Oh God!
Like this is Cleon the 27th, and he doesn't even look anything like the Cleons anymore. Maybe he's I can't. So the other people, yeah, I don't know, and a lot of people have taken me to task and saying that like he does not have Thespian eyes, he has mechanical eyes. I keep on looking back and I'm like, I don't, because like every time we see him in the dark, they're like glowing really. They always see him in the dark, and I'm like, I feel like Constant and Hugo's eyes did that too. Like not glowed, but they kind of like fluoresced oddly in dark conditions.
Yeah, in this scene, it's specifically like it's happening sometimes and it's not happening in others, and it's not like it's a difference in camera angle or they changed over to a different shot so the light's hitting it different. It happens. Like it's almost that he can make it happen or that it reflects his internal turmoil, right? Like, I don't know. There was something that felt like he was in control of it in this scene.
It was like his mental state or his power. It's like his psychic powers flexing.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see, man. I'm still looking forward to season 3 very much.
Oh yeah.
This the switcheroos did not kill my enjoyment of this show entirely. I think there's still a lot to like here. So yeah. I'll be excited to see what they've got in store for us next season.
Yeah, 100%. Me too. All right, that's going to do it for this week. If you do have any feedback for our wrap-up podcast, because we do have that coming up, go ahead and send that to foundation@baldmove.com. Once again, that's foundation@baldmove.com. Otherwise, we appreciate you listening. If you'd like to follow us, we're not done. There's going to be an episode of our interview, our wrap-up interview, our forensic interview with David S. Goyer, the showrunner, is coming up. We have a conversation with Pete Peppers that we had, and it's always good to talk to him, talk that stuff through with him. And then we also have the feedback, the closer. So yeah, please tell us what you think about that. And if this is your kind of like last stop with us. We have got a bunch of other stuff going on. We're currently watching Ahsoka. We're about to start Loki. Fargo and True Detective, if you're more prestige television oriented, is in the future as well. Best way to follow along for everything that we do is on social media. Also, social media is @BaldMove, except TikTok. It's @BaldusMove. Finally, if you'd like to support what we're doing here at Bald Move and keep us podcasting and get some stuff for yourself, ad-free feeds, bonus features, etc., support.baldmove.com. All right, we will join you again for the David Goyer interview and then to see what you guys have to say to wrap up this season in a few days, maybe even next week. Until then, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Jim.
Respect and enjoy the podcast.